You're now listening to the Live, Laugh, Lariat podcast, brought to you by Good Guy, Bad Pants Pro Wrestling, with your hosts Daniel and Christian. Let's hop into this week's episode.
Want to do an intro or? Okay.
Yeah, we can do an intro.
Is this the intro?
This is the intro. Hi, my name is Daniel.
Hi, my name is Christian.
And we are Good Guy, Bad Pants.
If anything, we're men of many names at this point.
Yes, I have been called. I actually don't really have any nicknames.
You don't not even Dan? Does no one call you Dan?
No, my dad used to.
Dan the Man?
My dad got mad at people if they called me anything but Daniel.
That's actually a very real thing.
Yeah.
Because growing up, I had cousins named Chris and Christopher.
Yeah.
So that if my uncles called me Chris, my mom would get mad. His name is Christian.
Yeah.
That's important. And we're gonna talk some wrestling, right?
Yeah,
This is actually a wrestling podcast.
This is a childhood trauma podcast.
Yes.
So we hope you guys have tissues and some issues.
So, how this is going to work is today, on this first episode, I'm going to ask Daniel, Dan the Man right here, Daniel, I'm going to ask him a bunch of questions that we typically, it might be in the realm of questions we would ask a professional wrestler or someone we find very interesting. But we're going to speed round some questions, see what we get out of it, see if we learn anything. Might be fun, might be cool. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. So we're going to start with some wrestling, okay?
I would love that, yeah.
What is the earliest show you remember growing up?
It was SmackDown, and it was like when Eminem first started. Ray and Eddie were feuding, the Dominic custody match.
That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
That is actually, I get it.
Yeah, it got me hooked pretty well. There was,
What about it got you hooked?
I don't know. I think... I don't think I was allowed to watch it, or I didn't even ask. I just kind of watched it in secret.
That's true. That's a very real thing. I wasn't allowed to even watch it till I was 13.
So sorry. God damn. I have a dog who's... I
think we have a version of the podcast called, the Hondo version, where it's just, an uncut Hondo interrupted.
He's on his noise-making shit right now, so... Literally just making noise. So you just missed about 2 minutes of him just barking at nothing. So
it could have been a ghost.
Yeah, I think we were talking about when I first started watching wrestling, and it was SmackDown.
And what about it? So we have the Dominic Ray Eddie story, which at some point I think we will probably get into in detail because I find it fascinating as a storytelling move. But what about it was just I need to watch this.
I think it was it was a really good wrestling time because you had Kurt Angle, you had Matt Hardy, which I'm not saying he's the best wrestler, but you had it had a really good roster, and I think
Matt Hardy, there's really a time where he had a really great appeal, and he's interesting. He's a fascinating person to watch throughout the history of the last 20 years.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Rey Mysterio was my favorite. So I think it was just that kind of style that he had that kind of hooked me in. And then, so that was...
At any point, did you own the mask?
No,
Did you want it?
I definitely wanted it, yeah. I wanted everything wrestling, but I couldn't have it. I was living a secret life.
That's such a real thing I think a lot of wrestling fans probably can relate to.
Yeah.
That is the secret thing. I watched wrestling throughout high school, and none of my friends did.
Yeah, so you're kind of
and it's this secret weird hobby I have that but I can't miss. I'm like a grandma with the young and the restless.
Christian never comes out on Fridays.
It's so odd.
Yeah, so that's my introduction to wrestling.
That's very cool. So Rey Mysterio was your first favorite wrestler.
Yeah, first favorite.
Who's your favorite now?
See, my opinion on wrestling has changed a lot since then. To where it's the things I appreciate are different. I think mainstream, Hangman Page, Kenny Omega, Takeshita, to the magnitude that you want to put him as mainstream.
Takeshita, I feel like there might be an episode where we just talk about how good he is, and he's incredible. If he ever comes back to the U.S., which I expect he will, everyone should if he comes to your town, see him. He is next level.
So good. But yeah, and then I think it's like, first off, I love a German suplex. I think that goes back to like back then too.
Does that go to like angle and
yeah,
cool style?
Yeah,
very good style.
Anyways, yeah, like I like technical. I like all kinds of it. I watch a ton of it now.
Would you say, and I might be wrong on this, but did that change through the invention of good guy bad pants? Of now we go to all these shows. So a little background on us and this journey is we go to wrestling shows in North Carolina, and we go to probably a little too many. But we've seen so much at this point, and we do our match of the day, where we watch so much wrestling at this point. I find myself watching it differently. I feel like a critic almost.
Yeah, I definitely do. It's kind of like oh, they did this move on their last match, or like, oh, like everybody's doing this, like where you jump over everybody and then you pop up at the very beginning of a match and you have that
and you both do that like kip up at the same time, and the crowd like gets real into it.
Yeah, it's
the
like
topes.
It's like you're a little desensitized to some of the cool stuff, but like when you get the like really good, like I watched Kenta Kobayashi versus Misawa for 2003 in Noah for the first time, and that is just a meat slapping like suplex fest, and it's awesome. Like it's a 40-minute video. I watched it because I did it for the TikTok and Twitter and all that stuff, and it like that blew my doors off.
Blew the whole door off the hinge?
Yeah, it was like 2003 video quality. Like the commentators are speaking Japanese, but like this, I understood the story, and like
that's the incredible thing with watching Japanese wrestling. Is I used to love in like 2011 when Kenny Omega was chasing Okada. I was watching every tour on New Japan World, and the English commentary didn't always exist.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't matter. Like for whatever reason, it almost added to it. You didn't know what they were saying, but the emotion was there.
Yeah. It's just the art form of wrestling to where it's almost like like at a certain point it has to click for you. It's like things where if you didn't know what wrestling was and you saw it, you would be like, what is this? Like, why are you watching this? But like once it clicks, it's like a world. Like it's like learning another language. Like
and to the other side, like the positive side of watching so much wrestling, watching it differently, is you now kind of get into, you'll see a guy do a sequence that like he maybe not have done for 6 months, or if it's a reference to a big rival of his.
Yeah, like,
and independent wrestling, that's awesome.
Yeah, like the storytelling, the history of wrestling, the journey. It's not. I mean, like UFC and like real fighting, like there are storylines, there are rivalries, but like with wrestling, like stories go back so long, like, and the stories are built on relationships. So like being able to call back to that relationship and not even have to say anything, like just through like a move or being hesitant to hit somebody, or like the actions in the ring that are like a microsecond that just like add to the picture. That's, I think, for wrestling for me.
That's actually a great. That's great, because the Cody Rhodes quote of wrestling is a love story.
Yeah.
Which when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's really true. But here you call it's about relationships. Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Like just, and so many guys are so good at that now. That just little callbacks, as simple as Okada hitting a V trigger. Like hitting a running knee, but it's a callback. Like, and with certain guys, like Cody Rhodes is great at it. At just for the year and a half when he was teasing a pedigree. Yeah. In 2 different companies, he was teasing doing this move, and you knew if you were watching, it was like, oh, that's because of Triple H and their dynamic. Yeah. Which goes back 10 years, which is like. That to me, like it's like for Marvel fans find the Easter eggs. Yeah, Easter eggs in wrestling are my favorite thing in the world, because it's what brings it together. It closes the circle. And speaking of like finishing moves, what was your favorite when you were a kid?
Well, it was the 619, which from my playing of 2K is actually a signature move. But yeah, that
wasn't always a thing. Yeah, it used to be a finisher. They cropped it down a little bit.
Yeah, but that blew my mind. I don't know why. I mean, if you it's really cool and it requires skill, but like if you like break it down, like you probably lose a little bit of velocity going around, but I guess that's another thing about wrestling is like the suspension of belief.
Suspension of disbelief, yeah. That's a very real thing.
While a finisher may not look brutal, the way that finisher has like been built up, and,
it's protected.
Yeah. So like in a way that you could have like a really, I mean, and this doesn't translate well, but like the Judas effect, I think is awful.
That's fair. That's fair.
But the way that they've treated it is though it's like a secret weapon, but like
and that's suspension of disbelief, and you'll hear me talk about this a lot, but that how my background is a lot to do with theater, and suspension of disbelief is everything in that, and wrestling is very similar in a lot of ways. It's the greatest form of modern theater. It's great theater. That's what it is. And just buying into it, that for this 2-hour program, you are believing that The Undertaker was dead. You're believing Kane was his little brother who was burned alive. Ridiculous, but you believe it. Yeah. You fully believe it. Like, you believe these blood feuds exist.
Yeah.
And sometimes wrestling gets very interesting because that line gets even more blurred.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the recent CM Punk stuff. And this is a weird segue into that. But what I will say about that is some guys can take that real life thing and turn it into a story. And that's when it's interesting. Like, were you watching when the Matt Hardy Edge stuff happened?
No, but I've like listened to the podcast and I've gone back and watched it. But like the way that they take that and they turn it into something and they made money off of it. I don't know. I mean, like, it kind of sounds like Jim Cornette when you say like make money off of it, but like you just kind of.
Well, it's a way you take a real life thing and can translate it into a great show.
Yeah.
Because I think at that point they have an understanding. Like, it can't. The real heat has to be gone at that point, I think.
Yeah.
But that is a major segue. What is your favorite finisher now?
Favorite finisher now? Something that looks like just like a really good clothesline, like something that just looks like the person's dead. Like, not so much like the really cool moves, but like you hit the buckshot lariat, or you hit something like quick and devastating and the person's flipping through the air and they're just like laying there. Like, that to me, I think that is my favorite. Probably like a really good lariat, or like.
That's great. I love. Well, it's that thing that you show someone like a lariat by Hangman or Shingo or any of those guys, right? Or you show a chop by Walter.
Yeah. Like,
there's certain moves that when they're done well, it's poetry.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Who do you think throws the best clothesline in the business?
I don't know. I'm actually working on a video for that, so you will have to tune into our social medias if you would like to know that answer. Just
that's a great plug.
But
a good plug.
But like, going back to chops, I watched it was FTR versus Aussie Open today, and like within the first minute of the match, like both of their chests were bleeding.
Oh my God. Those are two teams that love to work, man.
At first I was like, oh, Dax is bleeding. I was like, this is crazy. And then like a second later, it's like, oh, Mark Davis is bleeding. This is.
I love and maybe we can throw a picture of it up on the socials. But there's a photo of them after the match. Everyone was bleeding so much. Like,
oh yeah, because they got cut open later. Yeah.
And like, in watching it, like, that match is cuckoo bananas crazy. Like, both Aussie Open I don't think gets enough credit, and FTR I think at this point you can just like, they're the best team of Milo generation of watching.
Yeah, for sure.
But Aussie Open, they're young and they're really good.
And Mark Davis is a Pixar mom.
Think about it.
Can't
unsee it.
You can't unsee it.
He ruined this for me at a New Japan show, right?
Yeah, we saw.
we saw them wrestle for the tag titles against
Christopher Daniels and Yuya Uemura.
And so we're enjoying the match. It's a good back and forth, and he just is like, hey, do you see it? And I'm like, no!
I was watching the match, and I was like, I have to put this in the back of my mind so I can enjoy this wrestling, because he is, like, dummy thick. But yeah, that is my favorite current wrestling move.
A good clothesline.
Yeah, like a brutal clothesline.
All right, what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding in wrestling? Like for people who don't watch wrestling, who are like, "Oh, that's fake." That's because you're gonna hear it. But what do you think is the biggest misconception?
I think the emphasis is on what happens in the ring and like the results, when it's like all about the story, and what happens in the ring is a way to tell that story, and it's hard to like convey that sometimes just because of the position that people have going into it. But I think it's just a misunderstanding where like the match is great and it's a huge part of wrestling, but it's a story. Like there's an ending that's already been written, and this is how they're playing it out. So
okay, so it's just like TV, like anyone else is watching. No different than Lost or.
A little bit better than Lost.
I think so. The endings typically are a lot better than Lost.
Oh, sometimes. But yeah, when wrestling is great, it's great. When wrestling is bad, it's bad.
It's so bad.
But I think that's probably anything.
Who do you think is the best guy in the business?
Best guy in the business.
Good guy.
Like the best person?
Interpret it as you will.
I sound like such a Hangman mark, but I think Hangman's like, his work's good. He seems like a genuine dude. Like he like trolled Kane when he had his alt-right takes about the Ukraine, and he seems like he's a good guy on and off of the screen, and he's talented. So for me, I guess that's what I would go with.
Now, does he have the best pants?
No.
No. Who has the best pants?
I don't know, but I know that he doesn't have them.
What meets the criteria of good guy and good pants?
You never know until you see it.
Who has the worst pants?
Matt Hardy. Hands down.
That's
I've
fantastic.
never seen. Well, there was like the early Matt Hardy and Jeff where they kind of were like the Young Bucks. Those were fine, but after that, it's all been downhill.
Okay.
I haven't seen Matt Hardy. That might be the reason why he's not more successful. It's just because of his pants.
Do you think he'd be that much more successful if he had better gear?
Yeah, I do.
like, what's the ceiling on this?
I don't know.
Could he have been like the top guy in the business?
I don't
if he
think
had better
Roman
gear?
would ever have won the title because they would never have taken it off of Matt Hardy.
That's, I would love to see an alternate universe to see that play out. Like
the bloodline with like Jeff and
Senior Benjamin's in there, Rebby's in there.
Yeah, Sami Zayn is still in there.
So Sami Zayn is incredible, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think he's the best part of SmackDown every week.
Yeah, I can't tell you the last time I've watched SmackDown.
Are you serious? It's getting better.
Yeah, but it's like so inconvenient.
Because it's a Friday night.
It's a Friday night, yeah. And it just seems like they don't care as much about it. But they brought Bray back, so I think maybe my ways are outdated. But, I mean, I watch so much wrestling that
That's fair.
Yeah.
So what's the ideal time to watch wrestling for you? Like, what's the perfect part of the week that you're like, yes?
Usually Wednesdays. That's just like the time where like, because there's not that many like events like with like streaming and stuff, and like being able to watch everything all at once, where you can just be like, oh, I gotta sit down at this time in front of the TV, and I'm gonna watch this for 2 hours, and then I'm gonna like go use the bathroom during the commercials, and like there's not that many opportunities. So like Wednesday night at 8:00 watching Dynamite, that's something that I'm always doing. And like people know that about me. Like
true,
it's just like,
true.
It's Wednesday. Oh, Daniel's got wrestling. So.
So what's profoundly sad is I kind of need Dynamite by Wednesday to get me through the rest of my week.
Yeah.
Like I look forward to it in a very weird way. That's just like I wake up Wednesday morning. I'm like, oh, wrestling's on tonight. That'll get me through it.
It's just like, it's halfway through the week. It's been a rough week, but hey, I have wrestling tonight. And then tomorrow's Thursday, and the best thing about Thursday is that tomorrow's Friday. So it just kind of snowballs you into the weekend in a weird way.
Well, this was fun.
This was fun. I think, I know. I don't know why I said I think. This was fun for me. I hope it's fun for you. My name's Daniel. This is Christian. And this has been Live, Laugh, Lariat. This probably won't be the same format for every week, but we just wanted to get something out there, introduce myself. We'll feature Christian soon as well. So thank you guys for listening, and until next time, I don't know.
Something clever here. We're gonna workshop
by
that.
episode 5, we're gonna have something cool to say.